Welcome to the long shot. It is
the lean-in situation.
Welcome to the long shot. It is a podcast. I'm one of your hosts. My name is Sean Conroy. The other host's name is Amber Kenny, and she's here right now.
Hello.
We had an exciting week. We had a lot going on. And I'm speaking only for myself because I really have no idea what's been going on.
I had a crazy ass week.
All right, so let's find out about that. Why don't we start with checking in with Amber? Tell us what has been going on.
Sure. I considered not talking about this because I feel self-conscious about if it was the right choice in the grand scheme of a pandemic. But I should be honest. Also, I think the whole going back to the office
Don't tell me you got a vaccine, because those things.
No, but going back to the office 3 times a week, like against my will, you get desensitized to being around people and
Yeah, no, I understand. Yes.
Like everything gets normalized. Yeah. But anyway, that said, that has nothing to do with anything. This weekend was one of my friends from work bachelorette in Vegas. And I went and I saw Magic Mike for the 6th time live. But yeah, it was wild to be in Vegas. Like I just was like, okay, I'm just gonna pretend that I'm someone who doesn't care about anything.
It seems
for like
Vegas
2 days.
Would be like a hotbed of people who are not that into worrying about stuff.
Right. Well, and Vegas is where people go to be like as hedonistic as possible. So even people who are going there aren't probably the most cautious. But B, if they even are slightly in their life, like this is the time that they
grenades and they're like, who cares?
Yeah, they like eschew it. Yeah. So that's what I did.
And the word eschew?
I think so.
Nice.
Did I use it correctly?
Yeah. Love
nice.
it. Love it. Don't fucking come to this podcast and not expect us not to use a word like eschew.
And sometimes I wear 2 shoes.
That is the essence of this show right there.
So like I have in the past, in the before times, gone to Vegas and seen Magic Mike quite a few times with like my core group of girlfriends. This was a different group of people. So I was like a little bit nervous, like they're going to do it wrong. And the way it shook out, I only knew the bride. I didn't know anyone else. And so that also was like, oh, was this a huge mistake? Like, should I just not have come? Right. But I had a good time, and yeah, and everyone's like, "You're fun," and I was like, "Yeah, I'm fun."
Of course. Can I pitch a Magic Mike outfit? Here's what I would do: is have him come in dressed in a doctor's coat with a mask. Right? He's wearing a pandemic mask. Then, when he takes off all his clothes, he's got a little G-string that is a doctor's coat with a mask on it. That's my pitch.
I love it.
Which I assume is the kind of pitch you have in a writer's meeting for Magic Mike. Like, there's not a lot of stuff to write, so it's like, what are the costumes going to be? That's what I want the writers here for. And can we get the writers' lunch today, please?
It's written, but it's been written. Like, it's the same show that I saw originally. So I don't think there's a writer's room active currently.
It's weird. It's weird, too, because the show starts with them going, well, looks like there's going to be some kind of civil war. Like, it's a little dated at this point.
Yeah, it's a little dusty. All the songs are like Dixie and stuff. Like
peas, 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 eating goober peas. The Georgia militia eating goober peas.
But I also had 2 instances where so the weekend before I was in Orlando, I'm still recovering from like the tiredness of the time zone differences, but also the like being in the office has really fucked me up in ways where like I'm getting less sleep on a regular basis. Mm-hmm. And I think on some level, we may have talked about this before, but on some level I was like, I could do this like for a week. And now it's like, oh, this is like permanent.
Oh, it is.
Yeah. I don't like, I was able to handle it energy wise, like as a one-off. And so I'm still adjusting to the like permanent nature of all of that. So I'm just like chronically sleep deprived and tired and overwhelmed. And we flew to Las Vegas and it was revealed. Well, they announced the bride's
everybody
name.
Together. You guys were on the same flight.
It was different groups, but there were 5 of us on this flight. It was a group of 11 people. They were like some were from San Diego, some were from.
They moved out of college, and people.
Yeah.
Ways.
And some people drove. I wanted to be able to get the fuck in and the fuck out, but then there's the flying. Like you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't. But so we all flew together. Again, I don't really know anyone except the bride and
the bachelorette. So
right. And we land and we had to check our bags. Like we had shitty tickets. So we had to check our bags. We were waiting for our bags to come out on the carousel.
By the way, I'm sorry to tell you, we don't actually put them on the plane. They dangle off transport.
It really weighs down the... But as we were there waiting for our bags, they announce the bachelorette's name, like, and go see an attendant. And so I was like, oh, it's probably a surprise, like, because it's your bachelorette. The fun begins. And she goes over there and says, they say, did you lose your phone? She goes, no, it's in my hand. And she's like, everyone check. And I was like, I did. I like just left my phone on the plane. I think I was like excited and got up and it was in my lap. And I don't know what happened, but
there's always a lot going on the plane. I've left my phone.
Well, and it was like a dawn flight and I'm sleep deprived. Like there was a lot happening. And I was going to have to go through, they were going to give me a fake ticket. I was going to have to go through security at the Las Vegas airport to go get my phone. And I was like, this is such a nightmare. And the whole group is waiting for me. Like I am so the weak link in the group. But then
you said she was fun, Doris. She's not.
Well, that's why I was like, ooh, I really gotta turn it up. I gotta make up for some lost time. So but then they were like, oh, an attendant will be coming in like 15 minutes if you want to wait here. And I was like, yes, because going through security is sometimes more than 15 minutes, and it's nightmarish.
Sometimes the understatement of the year, going through security is sometimes more than 15 minutes. Yes, that is true.
I don't want to be unfair to security.
Like, no, they're doing their best. Look, let's not criticize these people for what they do. Every day they get up and go to work.
Anyway, so they brought it to me and I was like completely mortified and embarrassed, but everyone was very nice. We went dancing and again, it's fun hanging out with strangers in that way because everyone's like, oh, you can dance. I'm like, yeah, I can dance. Like it's kind of what I do. But I sound so cocky, but I like dancing.
I have a comedy dance troupe called Liquid Feet. Perhaps you've heard of us on the Great American Dawn Show.
Did not bring that up. I like twice somebody was like, how did you meet your husband? And I was like, doing comedy. Like, I don't want to talk about it. I do not.
I get it. I mean, that is rough.
Because everyone's like, so tell me your bits. And I'm like, I don't want to. And you don't want to. Like, and what I'm about to say is so strange, but everyone's reaction is like, oh my God, that is so cool. And in my head, I'm like, I'm telling you that I failed at something, like, but okay.
That is cool.
I guess. I mean,
the essence of cool is failing at things.
Failing fantastically. And then, so we went dancing and we went to Magic Mike. All of that was great. La, 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 la. Everything's fine. I go to bed and I didn't set an alarm. In hindsight, there was a lot of mistakes made. I didn't set an alarm, but I always wake up so goddamn early with Smudgy. Like I wake up at like 4:45 no matter what. But I think I finally had a bed and I was able to sleep. And I had a room to myself. Nice. And I'm just sleeping.
Nice.
I'm just sleeping and I'm in my little matching pajamas. Like I might have
put the thing on the door. That's the first thing you got to do is put the thing on the door.
I didn't put the thing on the door.
Oh, that's a mistake.
But so I'm dead asleep. And I just hear a knock at the door. And I sit up in bed like this because I know exactly what it is. And I run to the door and it's the people on the flight with me, all fully dressed with their suitcases. And I'm like, shit. So I had to scramble and pack and get dressed in like 2 minutes. And I did it. But I was just like, I look like such a fuck up. This is not my MO normally, but whatever.
I thought you were going to say it was housekeeping. That's where I thought the story was going, that it's always, so because then I was going to be like, oh, you got to put the other thing on the door. You got to put the one thing on the outside of the door. You got to put the other
right.
On the door.
No, it was that like time for our flight. And I was just like,
you were just there basically overnight.
I was there 2 nights.
2 nights. Oh, okay. So this was after the second night.
Correct. They weren't like, let's go to flight and then come back tomorrow.
Yeah, I got lost in the middle of that.
Sorry, I cut out like
I thought you had a whole day to go, and because when you said they showed up and they were fully dressed, I was like, time to hit the pool deck, and then they had their suitcases, and I was like, why would they have their suitcases?
No, yeah, I cut out
the pool.
I cut out the meat of the story a little bit. But it was the getting there and the leaving. But we got to the flight. I was
angry on your behalf for a moment there. What the fuck are they doing with their suitcases if we're just going to the pool?
And it's funny traveling with a group of strangers, basically. I wasn't by the end, but
a pilgrimage, they call that.
And also with the COVID of it all, like people kept being like, do you think that we could put our suitcases somewhere? And I was like, yeah. Yes, it is a casino. They want us. They will take our suitcases 8 hours before we could check in because they want us to go spend money in the casino. Like they've thought of this. And then they're like, how will our suitcases get to our room? And I'm like, there's a system, baby. Like, don't worry. You're going to be fine.
We could smoke 9 packs of cigarettes and just sit in one seat and play slot machines for 11 hours.
And it was fun because like, our first meal there, everyone's eating just, crap and frozen margaritas. And there was a girl at the end who was eating a salad and she had a margarita with an extra shot in it. And me and the maid of honor were like, we got to keep eyes on this one. That's going to be a problem.
This lettuce will absorb the alcohol. It's really got a lot of nooks and crannies in the lettuce. So it's
and but I just got home yesterday. Like everything's insane. So that's my checking in. We said we were going to do a quasi short one, so I did a quasi short.
Yeah, that was quasi short.
But if you have any questions about the trip, I'm happy to answer.
Who was your favorite dancer in the Magic Mike show? Was it Mike or was it somebody else?
Mike is always the best dancer. He's basically the lead.
Hence the name of the show.
JD is great. He's very acrobatic. We went to a VIP meet and greet afterwards. And it was so funny because everyone knew. I was like, I'm the old perv. I've been 6 times. And I was like, oh. And I was like, JD, like I've been going. And he's like, oh, you used to go because now it's at the Sahara. He's like, so you went when it was at the Hard Rock? And I was like, yeah, RIP. And all the girls were making fun of me because I was like talking shop, like, oh, there's a new guy, huh? Who's doing that dance? That's cool. Like,
let me tell you something, honey. You got something special. You can't be here forever. Did you win any money, or did anybody win any money?
I never gambled. I never do.
Did you? Oh, you didn't do any gambling.
Mm-mm.
That's probably best.
It's more just dancing and drinking. We went to Fremont Street, which I'd never been to before. That's like
I've never been to Vegas, by the way, so I don't know
at all.
Never.
You're not missing anything. I go there quite a bit, and I don't care for it.
Well, you know how much I love being in large crowds of
right.
people who are completely out of control and
right.
don't give a fuck about the people around them.
I will say the one fun thing, but again, it might not be your cup of tea, but like late night Vegas, like everyone is drunk or on some sort of substance. So you just kind of walk by people and be like, great hat. Like everyone is just like, it's like a party that is has no boundaries. After the show, there was this woman named Elaine who saw the show by herself. She was celebrating her divorce. Mm-hmm. And we just like adopted her, and she hung out with us the rest of the night and kept buying us rounds of shots and stuff. Like nice. It's like stuff like that where I would probably never do something like that in Los Angeles, but you're just kind of, you feel a little communal with your partying. You just have to have your feelers up for like good versus bad people.
Right. That would be my issue, would be that I would be like, hey, nice hat. And somebody would be like, what the fuck did you say? The fuck did you say? You know, like it's a different.
I'm a very tiny girl. I can get away with a lot.
Exactly. Like, there is something about large men that attracts violence.
Well, and because large men are scary. Like, yes. like present company excluded, but like
not excluded. No, it's true.
No, but like if you were gonna do a rundown of like things that might make you uncomfortable, like Big and Man are on that list.
100%. No, that's something I've been aware of since I was a little kid. Is like there's a little kid, although I was taller than everybody else, and it was like, oh, this is the guy that we should fight. Let's fight that guy because he's bigger than us.
No, my heart goes out to you because it's not the exact same thing, but I remember like the tall kids in class, whether I don't think the teachers knew it. I don't think it was conscious, but they would sort of expect more out of them. And because I was so teeny tiny that like, if I did anything, it was like, what an accomplishment. Like, and I recognized that at a pretty young age that it was unfair. How
it was so fucked up because it was like second grade and we were learning the times tables and the teacher expected me to dunk a basketball. It was like, that is not.
He was like, we're not even doing that. Yeah, there's no basketball even involved.
I went to a stand-up show last week and just to watch, and I was sitting not in the back, but like in the middle towards the back. And there was a guy in front of me who was reasonably tall, and we were sitting at the same height. So in other words, he was kind of blocking my view. And I'm very aware when I go into a theater or whatever that the people behind me are like, God damn it, this motherfucker. Why the fuck does he have to sit in front of us? And so I always try to sit like as low as possible and as still as possible. And this guy in front of me was hilarious because he never stopped shifting like this. So anytime I tried to look and he was like cackling with laughter and like, ha ha ha. And I was like, you are the person who gives tall people a bad name. It's your fault. All right. Well, welcome back to the real world. Vegas is not everything. My checking in, I will just say that I watched the scariest movie I've seen in a long time last night. And I ended up watching it until like 6 a.m.
No.
Have you seen, and it's not a great movie, but it's called 13 People or something like that.
No.
And it's about that. Do you remember that whole thing where all those kids were trapped in a cave in Thailand?
Is that the one where they put them in, like, they knock them out?
I didn't know that until I watched the movie. Yes, I knew. I knew that they rescued these kids, that they were in there for a long time. But I don't know. I missed that whole part of it. And so there is a point in the movie where one of the characters, they're like, by the way, it was hilarious because it's like Viggo Mortensen and Colin Farrell, right? So Viggo Mortensen is Aragorn in Lord of the Rings. He's like, my lord, we must bring the blah, blah, you know. And Colin Farrell is the Irish guy who's like, seems to me we've got to find a way to do this and that, you know. And both of them were playing like dudes who could have been chimney sweeps in this movie. Like they both were like, oh no, governor, seems we've got to find a way to get these kids out of the cave. It's crazy, they're never going to get out alive. There's no way for us to... Like, the accents were so...
over the top,
bizarre compared to everything I had ever seen them do. So that was really making me laugh early on. But yeah, there came a point in the movie where one of them was like, I think I've got an idea that might help us rescue these children. We've got to get Jason in here. And they were like, what does Jason do? And I thought they said he's an exorcist. And I was like, why would they bring an exorcist in? But it turns out he was an anesthetist. And that was why they brought him in, was to fucking knock these kids out for hours at a time.
Because if they panicked at all, they wouldn't
and that was what was so scary about the movie. It was like two incredibly scary things. One, drowning. Two, dying in the cave. Claustrophobia.
Yeah.
And both of those things happening at the same time. And that was the whole thing, was them putting on scuba gear. And because the cave was so far, they all had to have like 11 tanks of oxygen with them and drag them through these caves that were like this wide, and then go inject these kids. And Viggo Mortensen kept on saying, like, we've got to think about them as if they're just packages we're delivering. They're not people anymore. We're just delivering packages from one end of the cave to the other end of the cave, and we'll get them out alive. Anyway, it was terrifying.
I only know about it because a friend watched the documentary about it,
which I heard was great
and described it in great detail. But it's
when they started to do the thing about we're gonna give them ketamine and knock them out, I was like, because I didn't remember any of that from when it actually happened. I remember when it happened,
right?
Did not remember that, and I was like, they can't do that. They must try it, and then it doesn't work, and so they do something else.
I feel like the news story didn't go hard in that part of it.
I'm pretty sure they kept it. Yeah,
it's unsettling. Yeah. Well, and also because it was like 13 kids, right? Like that's the name of the movie.
It was 12 kids and a coach.
But just the image of like 13 lifeless bodies floating, like that is so creepy. Never mind the drowning in the cave. Like it's also creepy. And then
and they like tied their hands behind their backs, so if they woke up, they wouldn't be able to flail and like
pull their mask off.
Yeah.
Oh my God, it's so scary. But also, if one of them was having a medical emergency or died or something, like you wouldn't. No, like you couldn't tell the difference.
Right. They had moments where they kept on like putting, because they had to make sure like the mask fit right and wasn't leaking while they were doing it. So they kept on like putting the kids' faces, like it's horrifying. They would knock these kids out, put all the stuff on them, knock them out, then roll them over in the water so they were face down. Then one of the guys would be like underneath looking at their face for a second.
To see if bubbles.
Yeah. And then just go. And then they would start swimming. And, the other part of it is the kids, like the first time they did it, this is kind of like what you were saying about the normalization of the masks and the office and all that stuff. The first time they did it, they were like, make sure the kids are all facing the other way. Don't let them see that we're doing this to the kid who we're going to take. We don't want to, So they're like injecting him and tying him up in knots and putting zip ties.
And they're strangers, like to these children.
Yeah, who have been in a cave for 14 days or whatever, or like 2 weeks or a fortnight or some
one
length
of those.
Of time. I'm not sure.
A baker's dozen.
Right. So the kids are all looking the other way, but like one kid is kind of trying to peek over his shoulder, like what's going on. But then by the third or fourth kid, the kids are all just watching the whole procedure and watching what's happening to each of them as they're being. And they don't all do it at the same time. Like they can only do like 4 a day. So
oh my
they take
God.
out the first 4, and then the rest of them are just sitting there. And
how
even
do you
that
decide?
But even that, it was like they finally find the kids. That's the first moment is when they go, they go back to the major and they're like, we went through the third chamber and found another chamber and the children are all in there, and they have to like leave them there. They go and they find them and they're like, we're coming back, we promise. But like, imagine being those kids.
It's insane.
Anyway, they rescued all of them, which is kind of crazy because one of the guys says, like, they're definitely all going to die. Like, there's no way this is going to work. If we get one out, it'll be a huge accomplishment.
Well, I remember, again, this is such a game of telephone, but my friend saying from the documentary that when they were pitching this plan to like the parents or something, they're like, oh, has this worked before? And they're like, no one's ever
done it.
Yeah.
Right. No, they weren't pitching it to the parents, or at least not in the movie version, because the parents, the government basically kept the parents completely in the dark the whole time and didn't want them to know anything. Even when they started rescuing kids, again, this is the movie version, so who knows if this is accurate, but I feel like, why would they make this up? They wouldn't tell the parents who the kids were until all of them were out. Like, in other words, if your kid is out, you don't know until everybody is out.
What were they doing for the like days in between if they were in the first group?
They were in the hospital. They flew them to the hospital
But their parents couldn't even know that they were in the hospital. That's crazy.
They didn't know because they kept up. They had like umbrellas to hide them, and it was crazy. Anyway, it was a scary movie. I watched the whole thing. It was like 11 hours long, and I was up till 6 a.m. watching it. So
why is it so long?
I don't know. It did not need to be that long. It was like, yeah, we get it. There's
we just told it to you in like 10 minutes.
There was a lot of swimming through caves. There was a lot of like.
I would imagine that was a big part of it for the folks involved.
And again, the story gets blurry because everybody's so excited that the kids got rescued that you sort of forget that 2 of the Thai Navy SEALs involved died during this rescue attempt, because of exactly these things of like getting stuck underneath the cave, the stalactites or whatever.
That is when I heard the story, is when I was in Mexico, when we were swimming in the swimming hole and there was caves, and somebody kept telling that story. I was like, could you not tell that story at this juncture?
Well, the other part of the story, which was very important in the movie, which I did not know anything about, and I think that this was an omission by the international news, and it leads right into the other thing we wanted to talk about, was all of these people working so hard because these caves are underneath a mountain, and they're trying to pump the water out from underneath the mountain. But meanwhile, there's rain coming down, and all the water up on top of the mountain is pouring into the caves. And so there's a guy actually who was Thai, but who had been living in like Springfield, Illinois or something, who flies back in and goes, I'm a water engineer. I'm going to try to work to direct the water away from these sinkholes. That's how it ties into the next thing we wanted to talk about. Direct the water away from these sinkholes. And so they pumped like 56 million gallons, or they redirected like 56 million gallons of water from these sinkholes into the cave. So that was a whole part of it that was obviously so essential to keeping it from drowning these kids.
Yeah, there's so many people involved in.
They said there was like 5,000 people who showed up to help and volunteer.
That's nice.
Yeah, but one of them was a guy. One of them was a guy named Phil. It was kind of an asshole, so it wasn't that nice. The other thing I remember from that you remember this at all? That like Elon Musk got involved
Oh,
somehow
yeah.
and was like calling one of the divers a pedophile or something like that. I couldn't remember any.
He's
of the
always
details.
on the right side of history.
Yeah. I was like, wow. I couldn't remember the details, and I didn't.
Well,
really
because he was going to do like something
send a submarine to
like
its way
the
through
train that he's inventing to go to Las Vegas.
Boring company.
Yeah.
Which turns out to be a total scam and has never done anything.
Of course.
Because he's a disruptor. So, speaking of sinkholes, how about season 2, episode 1 of La Brea?
Okay,
Where do you want to start?
No, I'm happy to talk about this. Full disclosure.
Oh boy,
I watched it yesterday, like sleep deprived and hungover. So like it was kind of hard for me to follow. I'm not gonna lie.
I watched it totally sober as a judge, 100%
right? And you're like
rested, and I had a hard time following.
I was like, do we know this guy? Like,
which guy are you talking about?
I don't know. Like, well, because it opened with
people in the park
with characters we don't know, and I was like, oh no, like. I can't meet new people right now.
Well, it was funny because that opening is Lake Hollywood Reservoir Park, and I have never been there, and I've seen signs for it, and I'm always like, the fuck do I find that place? You know?
It isn't like that, though. Like, it looks
different from that.
It's not, like, directly under the sign. Like, it's not like...
Right. Right. Like, yeah. But all it did was make me think, I got to find that park.
It's very close to you.
I've never been able to. I don't understand.
But yeah, and I was like, okay, so we have to start this season with another big disaster because that's how the first season started, right? Is that?
I guess, but I didn't feel like there was any... Like, what was the big deal about that? There was nothing that came of that scene that was important to the story.
Well, at the end, oh wait, was it 1988 or was it current day?
Which one?
That opening scene.
That opening scene, I think, I don't know for sure, but my sense was that scene, because if it had been 1988,
they would have
had some weird cultural signifier.
And something like so on the nose of like...
It would have been somebody like wearing
Ronald Reagan is the president.
Yeah, like wearing like antenna and like shaking them around or so, whatever, some specific.
Yeah.
Because in that other scene, to know it was 1988, somebody drove by with a cassette tape and threw it out into the road.
They threw it out the window for some reason.
And on top of which, what I thought was hilarious, like we'll go back to the beginning in a second, but what I thought was so funny about the scene where they throw the tape, the cassette tape, which has clearly unspooled, so they're like, let's get rid of this, is they both pick up the tape and they're like, oh, it's the 80s.
It's definitely 1988.
But they never showed what the tape was of. Like, they couldn't get the rights to whatever song or album would have been cool to show. So they just showed that there was they only had cassette tapes in 1988.
Yeah, well, because spoiler alert, at the very last scene, those two teenagers or young people,
they're both like 40, by the way, but yes,
they read the newspaper and they're like, there was a sinkhole in 1988 that didn't happen in our timeline.
Right. Oh yeah, right. So maybe it is supposed to be.
But I don't know.
Right. It was confusing. And then there's also the scene which you didn't need that first scene for the other scene where the other group, dad and the hot daughter who's attracted to her dad.
I feel like her acting's better. Am I crazy? I feel like she got a coach or something. She's
all they
doing
had to do was have her break her leg and she got better.
Stop like with the nostril stuff, and she's killing it.
And she never said, "Daddy."
Right. They all have like better hair and makeup too. Where like it's supposed to be like the same.
Season 2 is always an upgrade. Like there's always more budget. Season 2. But they at one point are looking across a field and they're like, "Oh my God. Oh my God, is that?" it can't be, it can't be. And it's the Hollywood sign has fallen
always.
But they didn't need the opening scene to see that. Like, I didn't understand why. Like, they could have just seen it and been like, holy shit, we went into the sinkhole in Seattle and now we're in Hollywood. But
do you like when
we didn't see it happen, we wouldn't know.
Right. Do you like when they were like, oh, we're hungry? And the dad's like, oh, I'll see what I could do. Immediately sees a boar, gets a spear, throws it at him once, and kills
insane.
it. I was like, what? Doesn't try at all.
But it was like, I think I'm remembering this right. He like gets away from them for a minute.
Uh-huh.
But then he just has a spear. Like, he just has a very carefully constructed spear. So I guess in that few seconds, he found a great branch and he whittled down a very sharp point. So now he has the spear. And they're like, we're hungry. And he goes, let me see what I can do. And he hears like rustling, like you said, he hears rustling in the bushes. And I was like, oh, something is going to charge at him and he's going to stab it. No. This thing is like 40 feet away.
Like a football field away. First time, like hits him through the heart. I was like, does he throw spears all the time?
It was crazy. That might have been, well, there was so many funny things, but that was one of my favorites, was that he just immediately had a spear, knew how to use it, was expert with it, and killed a wild boar all within like 40 seconds.
And also, it made it so there was, I know this is a reoccurring theme in the show, but like no stakes. Like, because the idea that they don't have supplies and they are hungry, like, that's actually suspenseful. That is,
we got to get food.
And they're like, instantly, they're like, there is no stakes whatsoever.
And I think, I can't even remember now because I literally watched it like 5 hours ago. Did they? No, they didn't eat that thing because all of a sudden the mama came along or whatever, right?
They cooked it. They cooked the boar. Okay. Yeah, they're sitting around like
a fire.
Uh-huh.
Jesus Christ! So they did all of that just instantly, no problem.
Right. They have all the skills. Mm-hmm. In fact, the fact that they fell down a sinkhole is good.
Yeah, they all were Cub Scouts, so they know how to do basically everything.
And this is not notable enough maybe for me to be talking about it, but it's stuck in my head where the girl, because the dad and the other woman were the children
that we've already met.
Yeah. And now these are the adult versions. Mm-hmm. But she's talking about like, I was kidnapped and so was Veronica. And the only reason I'm alive is because of her. Honestly, what I just said was written better than what it was. But she
became my sister, basically.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And she was like, even though she wasn't blood. And I was like, we got it, bro. Like, you don't need to underline, like, we aren't related, but I like her. Like, people have relationships. Well,
but that's the whole show. That is the whole show, is just recapping everything that's been going on.
But so she says that whole thing. And what he says, which I thought was so insane. Like, I cannot think of an instance. It just doesn't seem like what a human being would say to anyone. And maybe you disagree. But so she says all of that, recapping. I also think we all already know this. And he goes, sounds like you are really lucky to have her.
Yes.
They were both kidnapped. Like, what are you talking about?
But in the sense of being kidnapped, there was a great deal of luck at play that they got kidnapped together.
Right. I guess it was just like, that's what you took out of that speech. I don't know. I just thought it was very, it felt like writers writing and not human beings behaving.
Right. Which is, yeah, that's everything there. So we have the dad, the daughter, and the other kid,
right,
traveling together.
Woman.
So they go through. So they, he throws the spear, gets the boar,
eats it.
They make a fire. They eat it. They're all sated. Their hunger is sated. They don't eschew their hunger. They sate it. And
but then they see a woolly rhino, right?
A woolly rhino, yes. which is a very common. I mean, we all know
we're always talking about kids normally have T-shirts with woolly rhinos.
I meant to look it up. Is that a real thing? Is a woolly rhino a real thing? I feel like if it was, I would have heard that term before. Yeah. Because woolly mammoth is so common.
Right.
But yeah, so a woolly rhino.
It was bigger than a regular rhino too.
And woollier. It was like way woollier.
Way woollier.
Yeah. Although I think it was like 90% wool, 10% acrylic. So
sure. But this is where I have gaps. Like, I don't remember how they got away from that. I think I started getting bored and started thinking about other things.
It was great because as soon as a giant thing shows up, my first thought, so the woolly rhino shows up, and it was twice because it came once when the guy was by himself, and then again when they were all together. And by the time it came the second time, he had figured out what they had to do. So like, as soon as a giant thing like that appears, I'm like, oh, you just have to stand still, and then it won't see you. Just like Jeff Goldblum in Jurassic Park, you just stand still. Turns out that's not the case with a woolly rhino, but woolly rhinos can't see, and they do track by sound, so it is kind of the same thing. But the second time they ran into it was in the middle. It's so funny. They come out of the woods, and they're in a field, and they see two woolly rhinos. Meanwhile, one is also tracking them. Apparently, woolly rhinos are predatory this time and hunt humans by tracking them.
Sure.
So this woolly rhino is tracking them from behind, and then they see two in front of them, and they're trying to figure out what to do. And one of the women says, "We should get under cover." And the father goes, "We're too exposed. We can't. We're too exposed." And it's like, those two sentences don't go together.
This is what I'm saying. It's like they're not listening.
Right. It's like, no, we are too exposed. That's why we should get under cover. And then
you just need to cross out one of those lines, baby. Like, you can cut it.
Right. Does somebody read these scripts before we shoot them? But I mean, really, that's a job of someone on the show.
No, I know.
Literally to sit there and read it out loud to themselves
to make sure that every
sense. Line follows every other line. And that was like,
no, because also when you're editing, I'll use I statements. When I edit scripts, it's very easy to be like, oh, I'll just cut out this part without realizing like, oh, now this part makes no sense. Like it couldn't just be deleted. It needs to be rewritten. Whoa.
Reworded.
Well, also what's wild is we set up that the dad is really good at killing things with spears.
Yeah.
So you'd think that would come into play with the woolly rhinos?
I will give him this one because what he does is, because there's now 3 rhinos.
Okay.
There's the ones at the other end of the field and the one behind them. So they're kind of trapped in the middle. And he literally goes something like, "Lucky for us, they can't see us."
He's always talking about how lucky everybody is.
Yeah. They only track by sound. So I'll distract them and then we'll escape or whatever.
Oh.
So then, again, this fucking, decathlete takes the spear and chucks it like 100 yards directly into a tree. Like, he does not miss with that thing.
Right, no.
And he chucks it into a tree, and it just does that thing that spears do when you hit the tree exactly right, where it goes, and the 2 woolly rhinos are both like, "Whoa, what's that noise? Let's go figure that out."
How did he figure out that they track by sound?
I think that was when he, the first time he encountered the thing, and he was running away from it, and he fell down the hill, and then he just stopped and looked up, and it was kind of looking around, but he wasn't making any noise. I think we were supposed to take from that.
Wow, that is a big leap in logic. But
otherwise, what else is he going to do? He's not Jeff Goldblum, where he already knows all this shit about don't move.
Right.
Or I guess it was Sam Neill who knew not to move. Jeff Goldblum was the one who took the flare and was like, "Hey, over here!" And Sam Neill was like, "No, like, don't do that."
Right.
And then the lawyer got bitten in half. But they're set because he made enough noise to distract these things. The problem is the girl has an artificial leg that she broke when she slipped on a pebble.
Mm-mm.
And now she can't walk and she's in pain from that.
Mm-mm.
So she is going, ow, 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 ow. And that's exactly the thing that woolly rhinos don't like to hear.
Right. That's what they are attracted to.
So they come after them, and then it turns into, Kong versus Godzilla of the hunting woolly rhino and the other ones.
Oh, they weren't friends.
Competing. Well, they could have been, but, sometimes when you're hungry, you'll go after your friend for the food.
Wow.
So then those people, that was about the most interesting part of that whole crew. There's like 4 different stories going on.
I know. And that's why I was like, I can't do this.
So that took care of that story.
Could hook you that much. Okay. We kind of talked about the 1988 teenagers.
Oh, there's more to that story too.
Okay, let's get into it.
Right. So they're like, where the fuck are we? And a pickup truck comes driving along, an old pickup truck. And they're like, oh, looks like we're in the 1950s. But then luckily a second later, he chucks a cassette tape out the window. And they're like, oh no, we're definitely in 1988. Then this might have been my favorite line in the whole episode. They're so hungry and they're walking along trying to figure out what to do. And I wrote it down. It's all the way across the room, so I can't find it exactly the quote. But they see a house through the woods, and one of them goes, oh, "Look, that house over there," and the other one goes, "Maybe there's something there that could help us in some way." Like that's literally
like it. Truly, that sounds like in the writer's room, like filler sentence, like, but we'll come back and write something better.
It made me think a lot about, because that is a purposeful choice to write the show like that, where everything everybody says is a recap of stuff that's already happened, and where people are pointing out the most obvious thing that they possibly can about what's going on. But that is a decision that's being made to write that way.
But also still not specific. Like it'd be one thing if it was like, oh, there's a house, maybe they have, and then it's like a specific thing about the story, but it's like something that can help us is so generic.
I might be wrong. They might have said food, because that's what they were really looking for was food. But I really think it was something like, maybe that can help us in some way or something like that. But what it made me think about was how the people in charge, and I don't think it's the writers, I think it's like a network thing.
They're like, dumb it down.
They're like, these people are so fucking stupid. You have no idea. They are the dumbest people in the history of the world. That's where we are as a culture right now.
Right.
Is you have to be so basic in everything you say, or people will get lost and change the channel. I mean, look at the way, I don't know if this was every commercial, but there are several commercials over the course of the episode where they go, La Brea will be back in 1 minute. Because they don't want anybody to change the channel, because if they change the channel, they might forget that they're watching La Brea and watch something else.
Right.
And I think it's all part of the fucking deterioration of the culture, and it's what's led to Trumpism and like the political situation, and it's all connected, because the people in charge are like, trust me, Bob, these motherfuckers are dumb. The way you had that person imply something, they can't imply it.
No. Too subtle. Also, I guess, what does it say about me that I'm like, this is the dumbest stuff of all time? Yeah. And I'm like, what's going on?
But
it's because it's so boring that I start.
That's what I was going to say. It's a different issue. It's like, who cares?
My brain starts like literally doing something else. I'm like, oh, I'm watching a show.
And it's not like somebody who's not watching it archly the way we are would go, oh no, I know exactly what happened. Let me tell you everything that went on.
Right.
Because there's no way to do that, because there's not a lot of connection to any of the stories.
Right.
It's just a weird... Anyway, so they go into the house. Luckily, somebody calls in the middle of it, right? Didn't that happen in the middle of, like, they're having a conversation and somebody calls, and the person who left the answering machine message goes, hey, this is Barbara, and if you're calling to reach me, just so you know, I'm out of town in Catalina for a week, so I won't be at the house anytime soon, and I won't be able to get your message. So leave a message. And they're like, ha ha, we can stay.
Yeah.
And then they get into an argument. I mean, it's so
They watch
bizarre.
Alf and drink Tab.
Right. Oh, Alf, to make sure. I didn't even notice the Tab, but yes, Alf, to make sure we know it's the 80s.
Yeah.
The height of the 80s is Alf.
And he's like, this is what real entertainment is like. I was like, what?
Well, he went so far as to say, like, it's so funny. The puppet has a puppet. And it was like, okay, stop trying to sell me on a 40-year-old sitcom, please. Yeah. But then they argue. She feels like she doesn't know what's going on between them in their relationship. Like they're trying to make it about something that we should care about. Mm-hmm. But again, like you were saying before, it's like he goes, I don't know, whatever. He was trying to imply that they could hook up more, or that they were dating, or whatever the fucking thing was. And she was like, I don't know how I feel about that. I don't know how I feel about any of this. And that lasted for 3 lines. And then after that, it was like, no, I'm good. Sorry about before. I apologize for being that way.
Well, again, not that I don't think that human relationships are important. It must just be the specific writing on this show. Mm-hmm. It's because it's like there will be actual danger, and everyone's like, hey, so like, are we dating? And I'm like, not the time, you guys. Like, how, like, I just feel like, who gives a shit of like, so like, are you seeing other people? I'm like, there is a woolly rhino chasing you or whatever.
So they reconcile. She apologizes for being kind of a bitch by questioning whether or not they were in a relationship.
Oh, because she thought it was just like a trauma bond situation or something, right?
But then she's like, I'm sorry. I said I should not have said that. Things are cool with us. And meanwhile, he's robbing a kid's piggy bank so they can have money to get something.
Oh, my God.
And
but yet he had a very like chill vibe for everything that was going on. I might have been upset by it too. Like he was just like very la-di-da
about
everything. Their situation being in 1988, watching Alf.
Right. That was weird. It is weird. It's like,
but he was just like,
we're in a different time and we may never get back.
Right.
Let's just figure it out. I'll take $100. We'll see what happens. Come on, let's go.
Like, that's what I mean. Like it was just like.
So they hit the road. They're gone. That's the end of that story. Then we have the fucking hilarious.
My favorite guy. Are you going to talk about my favorite guy?
Bumbling comic relief, the Rowan Atkinson of 10,000 BC.
The stone. He's like Cheech and Chong meets Rowan Atkinson.
With the evil scientist.
Right.
Right. Again, who the fuck knows what's going on with those two? Like they're so contradicting each other every two lines.
Well, and she was like, "You, this is skipping, but like you have to believe me because I lied to you before." I was like, "What? What is this logic?"
And she's like, "Oh, and here's the other thing she said. This is another logic thing. She's like, the people in that building want to kill me. You have to get into that building.
And they will kill you too.
They'll kill you." And the guy's like, I don't know if I like that. It doesn't sound like a great idea. Spooky. Right. We did get a scene of him meditating in front of a bunch of flowers. So that was he's very different. But yeah, their whole story was just like, oh, there's a building over there. We should go there. Oh, it's still far away. It's not as far as you think because there's steps that go into the ground. And that was the end of their. But
that you're making it sound like a short. That lasted the entire episode.
Oh, I know, but that was all there was.
I know, no action whatsoever, but just him being like, "Tell me the truth," and she's like, "I almost did." Like it was like a nothing conversation.
And then the other story. Well, the other story starts. I guess it's all one story, but it starts with them torturing the guy at the beginning to get information from him. Silas, they're like, Silas, you got to tell us what the story is. That's why we haven't given you water in 24 hours. Here, you want some water? And he takes the water and just spits it on the guy. I don't need it. I'm not thirsty.
Was that the same storyline where there was like the weird sort of like like the black hooded horsemen.
Oh, we haven't even gotten to the Klingons yet. Yes, that's coming.
Okay, great.
Right. So this
is the mom, the new boyfriend.
Right. And they pick up somebody else along the way. Oh, that's what it was. So they're like, we got to go find what's her name or whatever. What were they even looking for? We got to go find. They had to go find something. Who the fuck knows? That's
what I'm saying. Like I kept being like, I don't know what you're doing.
But 4 of them. So it's like the British brain cancer guy, the dying former Navy SEAL who every time you see him goes, I used to be a Navy SEAL for years. And then his wife, or no, the other guy's wife and the other dude, and the 4 of them are like, we got to go do this thing. We got to go. And then they're
the mom with the wavy hair.
Yeah.
Right.
And then they're like, well, we can't leave Silas here by himself. And so immediately the father of the girl, the former Navy SEAL, goes, I'll stay here and watch him. I'll make sure everything goes. And then the psychiatrist with brain cancer goes, he can't be here by himself. He's messed up. I'll stay with him as well. So now there's just 2. So it was like this weird thing where we could have decided that before we started. Or whatever.
Why? Yeah.
But then those 2 set off and they're walking along looking for whatever the fuck they're supposed to be looking for. And they run into, or they encounter, or they notice the girl who was the kidnapped girl's friend and sister, who has been kidnapped by Klingons. All of a sudden there's fucking Klingons out there. It's like, holy shit. This is a surprise because they're all dressed in like black, weird armor.
Yes. Like it's like medieval
hoods,
or something.
Yeah. And masks, and they're all carrying weapons, and they have a cart that's like very similar to every movie that has a medieval cart in it, because it's got, 2 wheels cut out of tree trunks. You had to find very round trees and cut the wheels out of the tree trunks because nobody had rubber yet. It also reminded me very much, it was Klingons, but also reminded me very much of Planet of the Apes. It's very much a Planet of the Apes cart, that they're keeping this girl in. And so then they run into the fucking son of the drug addict son of the cop who got killed at the end of last season. Spoiler.
Right.
And he's just sitting by her grave. He's like, I've been here for 2 months because I don't want to leave her alone. And they're like, you got to come with us. Then he sees that the girl has been captured and he thinks it's a good idea to go up by himself, to go up against like 40 Klingons. 40 armed Klingons.
Also, we're just accepting this. Like, I feel like we need to spend a whole episode being like, who the fuck are those people? Like, what are we doing?
Right.
But everyone's just like, oh,
they just came out of nowhere. Like, I'm pretty sure we never saw those people in the previous.
No, I don't remember them. Right? There was like weird, like the caveman people.
The caveman people had like spears, but they didn't have. Right. Because in this one they were like, oh, they have machetes. There was no steel in 10,000 BC.
And the caveman people, like their color palette was like browns.
Right.
And it was like
black and gray.
Yes.
Yeah. It's so true. They really focused on the color palette to distinguish them. But that's true anywhere you look. I mean, you want to talk about another show that doesn't really have anything that holds your interest? Look at House of the Dragon, where it's the blacks versus the greens. That's the whole thing at this point.
Visual storytelling.
Right. But so he attacks, he like makes eye contact. Oh, he throws a rock at the girl. That's how you get somebody's attention. Throws a rock at her. She looks. She goes, can you get me a drink of water? And the Klingon is like, what? And then the guy attacks the Klingon and knocks him out.
Also, everyone speaks English perfectly.
Right?
Like,
which we know is not true of Klingons. They speak Klingon.
No, but I mean, if we're dissecting all these different cultures, but I guess it's ultimately all going to be that mad scientists, like offshoots
something
of that
going
lady
on in that building. Yeah.
Or something.
And the other part of it is, if there was a sinkhole in Hollywood, they could have been shooting an episode of Star Trek there, and all
that's true. That is true.
So they are not real Klingons; they're just dressed like Klingons.
It's like, oh no, what's the name of that movie? I'm blanking on it right now. It's a really good movie.
Foul Play.
No, it's like
Star Wars.
It's like a Star Trek show, but aliens come down and think that they're real.
Yeah,
you know.
I don't remember the name of it either, but yes, I do remember the movie you're talking.
But that would be a fun plot,
right? So then they're just in a battle with the Klingons, like they're and it's like two dudes and the lady against 40 Klingons
with legit weapons,
right? And they win, they get away, but it's also funny, like they win and they go up a little hill, and then the Klingons can't find them anymore. Like, they somehow have disappeared, and they're like, we got to get out of here.
Well, see, they track by sound.
right. They're like, we got to get out of here because they're like 10 feet behind us.
They can probably hear us right now.
And then what's his name has a gun, and he, that's the other thing. Here's these Klingons who clearly have these specialized weapons, including a spear. And the dad had a spear for the first time 10 minutes ago and fucking nailed a boar.
Right.
That was moving.
Right.
This Klingon is face to face with a dude with a gun, throws his spear at him, and the guy just goes, whoop, and it misses him. But the mom gets captured by the Klingon. So now they exchange the sister for the mom, the fake sister, the kidnapped sister, for the
Veronica.
Mom. So the mom is
I think her name's Veronica.
Yeah.
She was my favorite actor in the first season.
I didn't have a favorite. I had no favorites. Zero. And that's kind of where we leave the episode, is how are we going to get the mom back and see
the sinkhole in 1988. So like the timeline has changed. Like somehow that's going to be
right.
important.
We would have known about that, and and then they see, and I don't know what they're looking at. They go, "There's another building over there that I recognize from Hollywood."
Oh, I think because wasn't that one group technically in Seattle?
Yeah, when they jumped into the sinkhole, they were in Seattle.
But they like made it all the way to Hollywood.
Well, that's why they were so stunned to see the Hollywood sign. They were like, "This can't be the Hollywood sign. Are you telling me the beginning of this episode is the Hollywood sign collapsing into a sinkhole? Because this makes no sense." But then they're happy because they're like, "Oh, we got back to LA." Like they're smiling at each other, the dad and the daughter. They might be about to have sex, but also they might just be happy that they're back in LA. They made it back to LA. It's still, how many thousand years ago, but at least they know geographically.
We didn't have any Dr. Nathan, did we?
Which one was Dr. Nathan?
That was my favorite character in season 1, just because that's such a dumb ass name. It was the woman scientist who like the dad worked for or something like ...
Right. Yes. No Dr. Nathan in this one. But just to go back for a second in the confusion of like, that can't be the Hollywood sign. We were in Seattle when we jumped into it's like you jumped into a fucking
and you're
that transported you thousands of years, and you can't imagine
that it went
fucked geography up a little bit.
Right.
Come on, don't you know the connection between time and space? They literally call it the time-space continuum. Haven't you seen? Although maybe, now that I'm thinking about it, if there's a lot of things fucked up, what if one of those things is
Hollywood's now in Seattle?
No, Zemeckis never made Back to the Future. Right, that's another possibility. In the early 20s, somebody was like, we got to stop making movies in New York. Let's move out to the West Coast.
We need to have
No, somewhere dark and rainy, because
as rainy really as possible. Movies. I mean, we're in sound stages anyway. What difference does it make?
It will ultimately save us money because we can just go outside when we have to film storms. But I just thought that was so, like, the credibility issue of, like, we can't be there because we were in this other place.
Well, that's what I mean. Like, but they buy everything else, like woolly mammoth, woolly rhino, like everything else is like with a grain of salt. But what they are shocked by, it's like, yeah, buddy, keep up. Like, I don't know.
Yeah. So I guess the drama going forward is, are we going to, we left out one thing. Very important thing, which is that CrossFit guy who is
You're
the guy that
gonna have to be more specific.
CrossFit guy is the Levi, the guy who cheated on the husband with the wife.
Oh, the Navy SEAL.
Is he a Navy? No. That's the guy who was back at camp.
Oh.
Were they both Navy SEAls? Like, no, he's a pilot. Aren't they?
Yeah,
both
pilot.
Right.
But he used to work with the husband.
He worked with the husband. They were best friends, and then he slept with the wife when the husband was being weird about the visions he was having, which he's not having visions anymore. And he understands why. Right. He goes, now that I'm here, all the visions were stuff that happened here, but now that I'm here, I don't have these visions anymore. Yeah.
Well, and the girl isn't having them.
Right.
The one that was the kidnapped little girl, but she's upset by that because she wanted to save her sister.
But Levi says to the wife at one point, "I'm never leaving you again." And then she gets capped because as they're escaping from the Klingons must have ultimately realized like they're like 10 feet up the hill. We got to go up the hill, and they're right there. And so they do that, and by then Levi is having a shootout with a guy throwing a spear at him, and the wife gets captured by three others. It's that great camera move where they have an angle on the wife, and then she turns, and the camera swings while she's turning, and there's just a giant dude. To go back to like large men being scary,
right?
Just a giant dude standing right behind her, and then there's two other dudes, and they grab her, and then she is in Planet of the Apes wagon, and along, I was waiting for those people in the line, the Klingons, to start going ooh, ooh, like that kind of shit. But they're all trudging down this road on their way to somewhere. We don't know where. Probably that building. Like they're probably like servants of whoever runs that place, because that's always where like the evil guy is, Sauron or whoever. And Levi steps out in the middle of the road with no gun and goes, "You got me." And then all of a sudden he's in Planet of the Apes wagon with her, and he's like, and they're both like, smiling at each other. What a treat. What a treat.
Yeah, it also just makes me laugh because the idea of being transported to 10,000 BC, like that's enough of an idea. But there is just like a hat on a hat on a hat on a hat on a hat times a million.
Well, again, I think that if you really dug into it, you would see that there was a mandate at some point, whether it was the person who created the show or whether it was the network or something, to go, we need to recreate the magic of Lost, where there's so much going on.
1,000%. And it's confusing. But
it gives them a lot to talk about. It gives them stuff to discuss. And they're like, what is the significance of the Klingons? Why are they? Because by the end of that, the other thing that sort of happened at the end was the Klingons all started to turn into ninjas. Like they all had like masks.
Right.
So, or maybe there was some kind of COVID thing going on. I don't know. They haven't realized yet that those masks are ineffective and don't do anything. Like, come on, cloth masks, give me a break. But yeah, you're right. There's a lot going on, and yet somehow at the same time,
it's very boring.
Yeah. It's kind of crazy. I really do think that. Look, we don't have to get into a whole discussion of other shows, but I would be happy to. But I don't know if you are into either Rings of Power on Amazon or House of Dragons on. So House of Dragons is the or the pre whatever you call it
of Game of Thrones
to Game of Thrones. Rings of Power is the prequel to Lord of the Rings.
Mm.
Now, if you had told me when I was in 5th grade that there would be 2 expensive, beautiful shows based in the world of fantasy and magic and swords,
dragons,
and sorcery and dragons, I would have been like, oh my God, my life is going to be amazing. And I watched both of them, and they are 2 of the most boring shows I've ever seen.
Interesting.
They are beautiful to look at. Particularly Rings of Power is beautiful to look at. But there is not one character on either show that has any investment into why we should care about them as a. I was about to say as a human being, but obviously some of them are elves, some of them are orcs, some
as a being,
as a yeah, I don't know what you say, person, not a person, but as a being, right? It's also
as a character.
The Rings of Power one is funnier to me because because so many of the names are names taken from the Elvish tongue. Like J.R.R. Tolkien was a languages guy, so they're all speaking all in English, but then a lot of the words that they use are Elvish, so it always sounds the way
like a newscaster.
Yeah, it sounds like people on NPR talking. They're like, "Oh, now we must find our way back to Numenor." Oh, who's that lady? Oh, that's Galadriel. Fucking kills me. And I will keep watching them, but they're super boring. But anyway, so there we go. There's your Brea-kdown
recap
for this week's episode. And I guess we'll see where it goes. I mean, it seems like. Do you want to make any predictions for next week about what's gonna come out?
I don't know about next week, because if I remember correctly, for season 1.
Mm-hmm.
It didn't get cooking with the like really cuckoo banana stuff till like halfway through, but maybe we're picking up the pace. But like once we started figuring out that all of the characters were like different ages of the other character, like I want more of that is what I'm saying. Like I
think that's a great point. And by the way, that reminds me of House of Dragons, because one of the things that they're doing on House of Dragons is they're going so quickly through like every episode is like 10 years after the previous episode. So every episode there's a new actor playing the character from the previous episode.
So how could you?
Who the fuck is that guy?
Yeah.
And I was thinking about that, and I was like, why aren't they using the same technology that Scorsese used in The Irishman and just take the kid who's 7 and make him 35?
I bet it's pretty expensive, but yeah, it'd be fun. I don't know if I'm going to say that I think this will happen, but this is something that I want to happen. It'd be fun if there was like a scene where it is like various ages of that Levi guy. It's Levi is the dad, right?
No, Levi is the guy who sleeps with the mom. Who is
the dad. It would be fun if we can meet the dad. If like there's a scene between like 4 of the dads at different ages or something like that.
Can I add another wrinkle to that?
Mm-hmm.
What if they were on a game show where it was like, will the real dad please stand up, and they all stand up? I forget what the name of that show. To Tell the Truth was the name of that show. Yeah.
Well, do you think we're going to get to... That's what I mean about like the pacing. It's hard to guess because like we might be in that evil scientist building next episode, or they might really fucking drag it out for like 8 episodes. Like
I'm going to guess that we have to get into that. We have to get into that
right away.
Next episode, only because literally she's at the front steps. Like,
I know.
What happens? Clearly there's a long tunnel underground that goes to the building because they're still far away from it, but there's steps going down, unless it's like
tunnels,
Mines of Moria. Like, they have to go through, some Rube Goldberg of like, you got to cross this thing on a seesaw, and if you don't balance it right, you're going to fall into the lava pit.
Right. I wouldn't put it past them.
You're absolutely right. Like, that's one of the things that makes it difficult to predict is like, there is no, I guess in a sense it's good in that way because it's not like, oh, we know exactly where this story is going. I feel like that building is going to turn out to be some kind of, this is just my, who the fuck knows, but it's going to be some kind of time nexus where you can like go in and out of stuff from there and control the sinkholes. But I don't know how they're going to ever explain that, like how that works. Like
they're not gonna. I'll tell you that right now.
Somebody found a wormhole in outer space and brought it back to Earth, and they,
and now they're
split it into pieces, and now they go wherever they want.
But also, like, to what end? Like, are they making money doing? Like, why are they doing that?
It ultimately has to be a criticism of capitalism,
right?
Some level of we are making money, but you're right. I don't know how. But it means that they can do the same thing they did on Westworld, which was another show that I did not care for because it was so like there's a puzzle going on. Nobody knows what it is. Go to Reddit and find out the puzzle
right
on this show. But it means that they'll be able to have people walking around where it's like, oh, this guy's a cowboy from the 1880s, and this guy's a spaceman from 2046.
It'll look like you know how in movies about movies, there's always just like showgirls walking by and then like people in togas, which like I feel like there aren't movies that look like that.
Of glass.
Yeah, there aren't even movies that many movies that have characters like that, but every movie that takes place on a movie set has like
on the back lot. So
I think it'll be a scene like that. Westworld. I know we're not talking about Westworld, but it was hard for me.
House of Dragons, and
it was hard for me to get past the fact that they're like, well, everyone's fantasy is to have sex with a prostitute and murder people, and I was like, is it? Is that everyone's fantasy? Like, I feel like you're revealing more about yourself than, like, I don't know.
Yeah.
I can't imagine being like, can't wait to go into a game where I could virtually kill someone. I don't know. I guess other people, maybe I'm different, but.
Although, if you think about video games, that is what they're all about.
Right. I think that's maybe it's a criticism of video games.
Right. But unfortunately, or probably fortunately, because I would have wasted a lot of time, Westworld was well written and sophisticated enough that I was so bored by it that I stopped watching it within the beginning of season 2. Like I was like, okay,
yeah, I think same with me. Well, and also it's there's only so many twists until you get back to the start again. Right. And so I was like, okay, so everybody's a robot. Like, what are we doing?
It just wasn't silly enough, which is what I think is what does it for me on this show is like, it is so silly and insane. And it's not like this show doesn't take itself seriously. It definitely does.
No, they're not winking at all, which is what makes it almost weirder.
Right.
Because if there was like a camp element,
right.
If they were like in on it,
right.
But they're all like, it's
there has to be some level. There has to be some level.
But we've talked about it before. It feels like the acting, like if the actors make a choice that isn't melodramatic, the director's like, do another one. Like, because there's no way all of these actors are this melodramatic all of the time. It's like they're getting coached into it. It's bizarre.
Well, I can't wait to see what happens in episode 2. So tune in next week.
Let's get into that building.
All right. So do you want to take a quick break and then we'll do our parting shots?
Sure. I'll see you in a sec.
We're back. You are listening to The Long Shot. It is a podcast. I'm one of your hosts. My name is Sean Conroy. The other host is Amber Kenny. She's here. It's time for a segment on the show that we call Parting Shots. So let's start today with me. Okay, here's my parting shot. Is this Saturday, which is October 8th, at 7:30 p.m., The Swarm, which is the improv group I've been in for 24 years now.
Whoa.
Is going to perform at a little venue here in Los Angeles called Dynasty Typewriter.
Oh my God.
Yeah,
Universe is combining.
Right. We have not done a show. I mean, we've done a couple of little sets over the last 6 months or so, but we haven't done an actual show in 2.5 years now or whatever.
Wow.
So we're doing a live show. We have a special guest group called Holy Shit Improv, who has been doing shows this whole time. They do shows on Monday nights at the, Silver Lake Lounge, I guess.
Oof.
Yeah, brutal. But at least they have a stage. For those people that don't know the Silver Lake Lounge, it's like a dive bar in Silver Lake, but they have drag shows there quite a bit. So there's a stage.
I feel like
used to be stand-up shows there.
Yeah, I feel like I grew up in that bar, but I never enjoyed it. It just has like an off energy. I don't know how to explain
it. So the Swarm is this Saturday at 7:30 at Dynasty Typewriter. Tickets are available if you go to dynastytypewriter.com and go to the calendar and go to October 8th, 7:30 show, The Swarm. You can see the beautiful poster that we have. The show is called Space Worms Are Riding Me. That's the name of our show. And it's an incredible piece of art that somebody put together for us based on that show name. Here's the other thing about this show, and this is a thing they do at Dynasty Typewriter, so maybe people are already familiar with this. They will live stream the show if we can get enough people to purchase a live stream ticket, which I think is $10. So at dynastytypewriter.com, you can get a ticket to watch the show from
anywhere. Yeah, that's amazing.
A different place, from a place. Like, I don't know if you could do it from a sinkhole in 10,000 BC near a...
We'd figure out a way. We'd get one spear and...
Right. Turn the show off. The woolly rhino can hear it. He's hunting us. He knows we're watching a swarm.
He actually tracks improv. That's...
Get me my other spear. Give me my good spear. But anyway, I'm excited to do that show, and I hope we get people out. Who knows at this point? But if anybody's interested, come to the show, come up and say hi, whatever. And then the other thing I would say as parting shot is, and I meant to say this as like a regular thing because it's connected to what we were already talking about. If people are watching La Brea and have predictions about what's going to happen, send them to us.
Absolutely.
Post them in the comments on YouTube. Put them in the
theories, questions, queries,
anything at all. I would love for people, because I have gotten a couple of emails from people saying I've already watched the first episode and it was amazing, hilarious, great. I loved it. I hated it. Whatever. Everybody's opinions are different.
I was going to try to rewatch a little bit of the episode again before we recorded this, and I was like, I can't do it. I can't bring myself.
I will say it is hard to watch TV that you're not like 100%. Like, there is something fun about it, but at the same time, you're like, I only have so much time left on this planet.
Totally. Well, I think it would be more fun if it was like a group of people, like a drinking game type.
We should. Yeah. I mean, I know you guys did that last year, but we should do
like a live
finale or something. Oh yeah, let's fucking get Jamie on board and do it live at the Dynasty Typewriter.
Yeah. But yeah, doing it just at home, feeling like it's homework. I was like, this is tough.
I literally took like 6 pages of notes that I meant to go through and do like summaries.
I feel like we hit a lot of it though, probably.
Yeah. But it is hard when you're not like, I enjoy this because it speaks to me, when you're more like, oh boy, here we go. Like I watched, have you seen the show Hacks at all?
Yeah.
I just started watching that last week.
I love it.
I finished the whole thing in like 4 days.
Right. It's great.
Because there were so many things about it that I connected to on so many different levels. And it was, you're right. It's great. It's really compelling.
It feels very opposite of La Brea in a lot of ways, but namely for this purposes, in the fact that things happen that I didn't necessarily see coming, but also were supported and justified with the characters and the character development. So it was like, I didn't get ahead of it, but I also wasn't fucking confused. You know, like
Wait, why did she do that? Yeah.
Who?
But yeah, I was really taken with it. I thought
it's really funny, really charming. Yeah.
Smart.
It's also just fun to see a show with two female stand-up comedians, and I know a lot of it is about the fact that they're female stand-up comedians, but a lot of it isn't. Like, they just are female stand-up comedians, and you don't really see that represented.
That was a part that I did not care for.
You're like, ew, I don't relate. Boo!
Well, women, we all know about women.
When will we finally have a story about a white male
comedian?
So many, like too many. Every single one.
It was funny because the hardest part of that show, I felt like, was making the stand-up stuff actually funny.
I know. That's always the hardest. I know.
Really difficult.
Well, and they always had to do that thing, and I get it, but like after a joke, one of the other characters would be like, "That's really funny," or they'd be like, "That isn't," or they'd be like, "That isn't funny," because like that was the only way to tell. Like, do we like this joke or do we not like this joke?
It's a thing that I am stealing from someone else, but there is a term that this guy uses about we need to have a fig leaf of believability.
Uh-huh.
And in the pilot of Hacks, it's very much the odd couple. It's like they're opposites, but there's similarities between them, but there's no way they're ever going to get along and they hate each other and whatever. And so the whole time I'm like, oh, they're going to have to come up with a way for them to bond over a joke. Like, that's the only way this is going to work is she's there to pitch her jokes. She doesn't want to hear her jokes. They hate each other. They hate each other. They hate each other. At some point, she's going to say a joke.
They're going to like make each other laugh. Yeah.
The jokes. It was this weird moment of like, what if it's this? Okay. But yeah, but how about this version of that? Yeah. Well, no. What about this version? This version. Yeah. That works. I like it. And you're hired, kid. You got the job, And I was like, ugh. But like once you get past that,
yes,
it's all
exactly.
fine, you know? And they did have to do that, and it was such a tall order to write something like that is not like ugh. So anyway, great show. Check it out. Watch it if you haven't seen it. Parting shots, Amber.
Yeah,
You said you had something really good.
I'll tell a couple more Vegas anecdotes. Like I said, the entire crew were
anecdote or antidote?
Mm-hmm. I mean, right now we need both. I mean, more than ever. The group that I was with, that they were absolute machines on the dance floor, and there was one girl in particular who was very like proper and upright and almost like conservative in the way she carried herself. And we were at this bar, and out of nowhere, like I truly didn't see it coming. She was suddenly on the ground doing the worm. I was like, oh, what is happening? So that was pretty cool. Like, it felt like the bride's prerequisite was like, you have to be great on a dance floor, whether it's surprising or like you just have to bring something. That was the common denominator.
When she did the worm, did you happen to see like an odd looking couple standing off to the side of the dance floor who looked at each other and went, it's definitely 1988?
Well, we were in a goth bar that was playing a lot of 80s music.
Uh-huh.
And that was another really funny moment because at one point, everyone was like grinding on each other and like humping the ground and doing the worm. But the song that was playing was Running Up the Hill by Kate Bush. And I was just like, this doesn't match on any level.
Well, stranger things have happened.
And I had I already told 2 embarrassing things that I did on this trip. I will tell the 3rd embarrassing thing I did on this trip. So we all get there Friday afternoon. One girl's like, hey, come here, look at this. And she opens a bag and it's just filled to the brim with Crocs that have like, I forget what they're called, but like you can decorate Crocs now. And so all of the doodads on them were like wedding Vegas related, like it would be like a pair of dice, a diamond ring, stuff like that. And so I was like, oh my God, and she's like, yeah, I work for Crocs and I thought it would be fun. And I was like, oh, that's so cool. And I went and took a nap at one point. And so I come back in the room and everyone's wearing their cool Crocs. And I was like, all right, where are my Crocs? And she was like, I don't, like she got really flustered and was like, what was your name and what size shoe? And anyway.
Size two.
And then she's like, are you in the wedding party? And I was, no, I'm not. There are no Crocs for me. And she's like, I can order you. And I was like, no, I truly just thought it was a thing.
I assumed you were a generous person who got them for everyone. But clearly you excluded some of us.
But yeah, it was just like an embarrassing moment because it was before we had bonded at all. I already had left my phone on the plane and I was like, where are my goddamn shoes? And there weren't any for me. And so I was just like, okay, like I just sort of sat in the corner and was like, time for Amber to be quiet for a bit. But no one seemed to really notice. It was more embarrassing to me.
Yeah. And she also felt horrible the rest of the weekend.
Yeah. Well, good. She's the one who did the worm, oddly enough.
She might have just been writhing in embarrassment. I hope when you guys parted ways at the airport, you were like,
I was like, I'll never speak
for
to you.
nothing. Thanks for nothing.
She was sweet. I don't think she has a lot of girlfriends. Mm-hmm. She was my roommate.
I thought
she left.
You had a room.
I was by myself because she left early.
So she was only there for one night.
No, she was there. It's too boring to get into. She just left several hours before our flight. So I was alone.
She had to get back to the croc factory. She was
yes.
Decorate. Yeah.
But at one point I said something about the Real Housewives, and she's like, "Let's put it on right now." And I was like, "Oh, okay." and then she's like, "I've never seen it." And I was like,
she just wanted to be your friend.
I know, and I was like, "Well, you blew it without giving me shoes." You know what I mean, man?
Get your ass back to the croc factory. Christmas is coming and the goose is getting fat. And it's time to put Crocs on the old man's hat.
Yeah. And there was another girl who was like trying to give everyone micro doses of mushrooms the whole weekend long. And she's like, it's really small. It's really small. I'm like, can I have a big dose? I don't want a small dose.
Oh, you're the one who likes Real Housewives. Yeah, sure.
I'm fun.
There was a moment in La Brea where they were talking about mushrooms.
I know, I was like, oh, I think they mean actual mushrooms.
That's like exactly the thought I had. For a second, I was like, were they getting high in another episode? I don't remember
that scene. I would like to watch that. It would definitely be the British stoner guy, right?
You're right. It was like, it's better. This is better than sitting in a clearing in the middle of nowhere doing mushrooms.
And I was like,
what?
That sounds good. That sounds fun.
He was only talking about regular mushrooms. Folks, send us your predictions for episode 2 of La Brea, and maybe we can make a list and keep track of whether they happen in episode 2 or whether they happen later. And let's see. I mean, who knows? The Romulans could show up in the next episode.
Anything could happen.
This has been The Long Shot, and we will see you next time. Bye.
And I am aware that you took all my shillings, and I am aware that my teeth need some fillings, and I am aware that you're ready and willing to throw all my goodness away. you